Welcome to another episode of the Data Protection Made Easy podcast.
Season 2.
It's season 2, indeed. A brand new season of the Data Protection Made Easy podcast, I should say. GDPR radio session today. So for those that don't know, we'll just be looking at some of the pieces that we've seen in the news this week and having a little bit of a discussion about them. A few housekeeping bits, of course, as normal. This is your session as much as it is ours. Please feel free to unmute, get involved in the chat. You know, those are always our favorite sessions when people are nice and vocal. You know, we absolutely love it. So please don't hesitate to give us your views if that's something that you like. A few other bits. We'll ask Miles very nicely to throw the privacy notice up on screen now if he can. I think he may have done. Oh, there's a link in the chat for that. Oh, okay, even better. So that's there if you want to look to know that the sessions are recorded and if you'd like to exercise any of your rights in that vein. A couple of other bits just very quickly. In terms of AI chatbots, obviously you guys will know that we typically do not allow them in this session due to consensus, obviously, of the community. So Balance Miles is at it again at the door, kicking out any chatbots that he does see. So if you have any concerns, please don't worry, because Miles will be diligently searching through those. And then also you can claim CPE points. I think finally that's probably the last thing. We can always drop the link in for that, but as obviously the listeners will know, these podcasts can claim the CPE points, which is pretty cool. I hope some people use it for that. I don't know if they actually do. I've never heard people actually.
Yeah.
They do. I'm sure they do.
I know. I hope they do.
But I think that is it. So I think before we go into the news, do we have any, sort of DPP internally kind of news that we? I think there's a few things that I wanted to bring up. I don't know if there's anything on your end, Kate.
Well, not much actually. It was just to say that to remind people that on the 5th of Feb we have our STES event. We still have a couple of tickets available, so if you did not already, please join us. I think will be a great session. I think it's very fair to say that we'll be one of the main and the first ones to actually speak about the STES process, to do something about it, and like a webinar, and to change some views about it. I think will be pretty cool. Actually, I'm quite excited.
Yeah.
So definitely join us. We have a couple of tickets available. We will make sure that we will do and share the link here within the chat. Other than that, I don't think that much.
Yeah, there's not. No, that's probably the main thing. There's only 5 tickets left, so we've done quite a good job at really branching that out, and people have shown loads of interest, which is fantastic. So if there's any eager listeners that I don't know, maybe you want to bring like your partner or a friend, then I don't know, it'd be nice to have it at full capacity. So if anybody's still eager to come, then those tickets are still available. And then the last thing, very quickly, I just wanted to bring up is I've had loads of questions at the moment on the podcast in relation, and just generally loads of people about SARS at the moment, and the fact that questions about events. Please don't worry. We have loads of sessions in the pipeline. There's a very interesting, different kind of sessions that we're going to tackle in relation to SARS. We know it's a very popular topic. We're also probably planning to do a lot more events in relation to SARS in the future. And we're seeing, obviously, on our end, a massive increase in the SARS on their end. So obviously, if there's any sort of doubts and stuff, we will be doing loads about it this year. So, please don't worry.
Yeah. On that SARS note, actually, we will be posting an article that was wrote by Imanchi, our new data protection consultant. So she wrote about the weaponizing SARS and actually the new ICO guidance about SARS and their opinion about it. So this will be published probably in the next couple of days. Well, definitely next week. So yeah, keep an eye on our website. I think is actually a very good article. Not being biased at all.
No, absolutely. So it will make for a wonderful.
Yeah.
So we'll jump right into the news. It's been a really quite interesting and specific week in the news, I guess, for sort of data and data protection. Okay, I don't know if there's anything in the news that has that's jumped out to you.
Actually, not much. I know that you have done a great homework, so thank you for that. I've seen that there are a lot of fines applicable to because of PECR violation, wasn't it?
Yeah, the ICO have been a little bit active early in the year. Maybe they've set themselves some New Year's resolutions and decided that there may
I
be
need
going to
some money
be,
now.
a little bit of money and get on board with some of the fines. So, what we've seen in the past 2 weeks is two fines for two different companies for about just upwards of £200,000 for PECR violations. So,
Okay.
first one of those being Ali Claims. They were fined about £120,000 for sending 4 million SMS messages promoting PPI, and it resulted in about 46,000 complaints. So a real significant amount there. And they also failed to offer customers a simple opt-out mechanism, which I think is interesting wording, meaning that they couldn't rely on the soft opt-in, obviously, to send those messages. So they're in violation of Regulation 22 of the PECR. And then similar to another company, ZML UK Limited was fined the exact same amount for sending 67 million. I had to check that I got that number right then, actually. Unsolicited marketing emails between January and July, which is super intense, where they were using data predominantly from a source that wasn't their own. Signed up to the website and realized that there was a list of about 361 companies who they were sharing details to and were basically marketing to them, and they weren't able to select and give basically appropriate consent to each of those partners. And that obviously meant that they were also in violation of Regulation 22 of the PECR. Now, I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this, because this is quite early and swift action in the year for the ICO. I wonder, in terms of this year in particular, what do we expect from the ICO? Do we think they're still going to be on that regular sort of PECR sort of crackdown, so to speak?
I think that's actually a very good idea, because as soon as I read these news articles, the first question that came to my mind was, well, the DUA Act is already in place or being implemented in facial, and obviously applies to PECR as well, and there will be amendments to PECR. One of the big changes to be kind of relaxing a little bit in terms of obligations to the organization. So I thought, okay, does this means that the fines from the ICO or any other bodies will kind of relax as well? I think that the fact that we have these fines on the beginning of the year probably says quite the opposite. I don't know. I think a couple of points to just point out with these articles, actually. The first one that came to my mind was the fact that was not just the volume of the message we were talking about, but actually the number of people that complained about. So actually the number of people that took the time to complain. So I'm imagining the content of the messages themselves were quite uneasy and wanted messages, right? To actually people to took the time of their lives and say, well, no, this is not good. It's not good at all.
A lot of people tend to ignore them, don't they, really?
Yeah, it's just like, okay, just leave it. Well, definitely, they might feel like, yeah, this is definitely unwanted, but I don't care, so I will just leave it. But it's right. I think it's a good point to just make that people are now taking their time and they understanding their rights and actually taking time to complain.
I think it's positive.
Yeah, I think it's a good one.
I think it's a positive step for the for the ICO, and I know they're pretty on the ball with the PECR fines anyway. I'd be really, really intrigued this year to see how they span out those complaints in light of things like the DUA. Obviously, we know that they have no real control over the stairs, and I'm not sure probably really how fines like that would work. But in relation to the DUA, I'd be really keen to see how they are enforcing that and the changes for that, and how quick they are to clamp down. If I had to guess, I'm sure they're going to be really quite lenient, probably from the offset, and they're going to give organizations a little bit of time to get their foot in the door. I do, which they've kind of already done anyway. This is what this down period was really meant to be for consultation and discussion. But I know there'll be probably a few organizations who will be waiting for the right for the buzzer beater, really, to be getting everything in place. Well,
I think just actually now put it a little bit on spot now is about the second piece of news that was so around the soft opt-in and around obviously the consent. And then when people were potentially signing up, then they were presented with like a list of hundreds and hundreds of other organizations, like third parties, websites and organizations, etc. And there was actually the argument, if I understood correctly, of this is definitely not consent because it was not obtained in freely, and it was not informed because, well, you are just presented with a list of unbranded or like just the names of the organizations But in cases like this, when actually nowadays all the brands, all the websites, they're actually engaged with third-party lists and other websites, even sub-processors, etc. What for you would be a good level of information, isn't it? Because in one hand, we have transparency and we need to make this information available to the users and to the data subjects. But we obviously have the risk that if we do present with our information, right, is this massive list with like you are just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and actually is a non-ending list. Will the people read it? Will they care?
It's a really interesting point you raise, Kate, actually, because when we're looking at the conditions for consent and we're looking at the facts that obviously we can't be bundling consent.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're getting this data from a third-party source in cases, especially where the data has been passed to these partners, meaning Article 14 is going to kick in as well. So there's a couple of things to keep in mind, but I think there is such a fine line, and I think that's why the point you raise is so great. Is that is in essence, well, yeah, is in essence listing like 300 odd partner organizations, making it even harder to make like an informed decision. First and foremost, why are you sharing data to 300 partner organizations?
100%.
That's
yes.
really significant. And I don't know if maybe that's like common practices for businesses of those types. I don't actually know what ZML UK Limited does. So maybe that is common practice, but is because at the same in the same essence, I would say if they had something that they give consent to share data with like our partners,
yes,
then I would also say that isn't sufficient because you haven't, again, I'd say that's bundled consent. You can't control which partners it's going to. But the other side of the coin also feels quite intense, doesn't
I
it?
agree. Yes, I agree.
So I don't even know what approach I'd put.
I would feel like, so you would like to, obviously, because there are a lot of things here, isn't it? Because if you don't collect consent in first instance that is valid, it will not just like this mysteriously just become valid within the time. But would you like, I don't know, how granular is acceptable with being still informed, with being still freely given, and right? So would you accept, for example, to opt in to every single bit of third party? Is it feasible? I don't think it's reasonable to ask that.
No, you're right. Actually.
I don't think it is.
I think it's too much, isn't it?
I think it's too much. Yeah.
I'd maybe even feel more on the end of. I mean, it's clear that they haven't given an option to opt in anyway.
Yes, that's a fact.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what they're all working for. We could maybe try working for purpose.
Because it's the same thing with Microsoft, like
sure.
in the sense of like we do work with Microsoft a lot in the due diligence questionnaires, reporting findings, etc. And one of the bits that we normally go is like around sub-processors and any third parties involved. And if you open the website, actually it just comes up with a massive page with so many entities that you just stay within the first 5 lines, and that's it, isn't it? So actually massive organizations as Microsoft have exactly the same approach. To be honest, I do appreciate in theory that definitely it does not feel right and is not correct and it does not follow, I think, the principles. But actually, in the pragmatic way, what actually would look like a solution? Isn't it? Like,
I think it's like overfacing. Is it comprehensible? Do you think you can like fully make a good decision based on that when there's such a broad decision making scope to have? Like, does that really help sort of like with the way that you would then give consent for that? And it's such an awkward situation. I mean, probably the first thing I would do in that situation is figure out why you're sharing it to that many partners.
Yes.
I think understanding the purpose for that is probably key, because I think either options at the moment obviously aren't really working. They're not giving consent for all the partners anyway. It seems like it is that approach of we share it to the partners. Here's a list of the partners, which they can see, which I think is in an effort to be transparent, which I appreciate. But then to give them that control also probably makes it just about as difficult. And then you've got to go into how do I manage withdrawing that consent? Of course, that needs to be as easy to withdraw as it was to give. So how do I actively do that when there's probably 100 people I may have to contact in order to manage this, unless it's a group that has its subsidiaries and whatnot. But yeah, really, really thought-provoking question, actually.
Yeah, I think it's just impressive. I think it's just impressive because sometimes, I mean, our life nowadays is literally just on an online world, isn't it? So when we engage with the party, automatically we are engaging with so many others and we are not even aware of. And even if they presented with this list, and even if us that we do this job literally for a living, and we do care about these third parties, even if you go in detail, would you just expect to see the name? Would you require potentially more information, an explanation of what actually they want, what they do, how the data will be used? But is it reasonable to ask for all the 400 entities or plus or more? I don't know. I think I would just leave that question.
No,
I don't know.
guess leave it in the air. I think you can probably tell with my slightly sort of like rambly response is that I'm not like 100% sure on the perfect middle ground. I think we have to be more transparent. And obviously what they're doing doesn't mean the conditions for consent irrespective. But you're right. Giving the names isn't really going to do enough, is it? Oh, okay, it goes to this company. I understand the data flow at least, but how can I give consent to something where I'm not quite sure on what the reason is? I mean, it's probably the same thing, just to market. The partners will also market to you, likely.
You are just giving them a right, because I am a true believer that consent as a lawful basis does not exist. It's just a theory.
I'm pretty sure it does exist. If we look at maybe Article 6 of the UK GDPR, we might find it on there.
No,
somewhere.
but in reality,
I think you're right.
It's not debatable if it's actually valid.
No, I think I've had this discussion before, and when I train sort of all my new individuals on the support desk, when I go through that processes, is I always find is that they always try very early doors to apply consent really early, and we want to give data subjects that kind of control and data, and you got to kind of have quite a weird conversation with them. It's like, I understand that consent's there, and I really get your line of thinking of why you think that's applicable, but when we peel it back, are we really giving them any element of control here?
I agree.
Yeah, yes, they could say they don't want to, but that just means that they're not able to go ahead with what they're actually trying to sign up to. And the fact that their data is involved is preventing them that access then to that service. Obviously, then not being, of course, freely given. There's always going to be an imbalance of power in my mind as well. I think it's really hard to kind of negate that imbalance of power, and unless and maybe in the case of marketing, I think it can work in the case of marketing in the main. In cases, I really do think it's a particularly tricky lawful basis, to be honest with you.
I think will be always debatable, and I think here is to understand how literal you interpret the concept of consent. How is your argument? Because I think it will be always pros and cons. But I think in the end of the day, I think made sense back in the days. But nowadays, how things just evolved with the online world, actually with data protection principles as well, how things are evolving, even with AI, with emerging technologies, etc. I think consent now more than ever, for at least the way it's actually described in the law, is a theoretical idea, not
I kind of get what you mean, to be honest, because we work on the basis of most applicable, don't we? And it never feels like the most
never feel right. We always put like, no, let's try all the others, and if there is no solution, we go for consent.
Maybe we hyperanalyze stuff, Kate. Who knows? Maybe we just spend too much time looking at
just rumbling again.
But yeah, it is what it is. But we won't talk about consent for the whole session. We probably could, to be fair.
Yeah, but I think actually leads us to your next piece of news.
Yeah, it really does actually.
Finally,
I think anyone that's been up to date with the news recently, in any respect, has probably seen that the UK government is looking to launch potential social media bans for under 16s. So a consultation recently has been launched by the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology to have a national conversation, engage the opinion of technology used by minors, and particularly the way that minors are using technology these days. Kind of in a similar vein to, if anybody's up to date with Australia and their approach to social media for under 16s. I think they're mainly looking to kind of restrict and add features, which probably ties quite nicely into the Online Safety Act, such as infinite scrolling, to try and restrict that. Things like streaks, and because they believe it drives sort of compulsive and sort of like doom scrolly behavior, which I think I agree with to an extent. I think as much as I am sort of the earlier generation, I guess, like Gen Z, I think there is a real problem like online, especially for younger kids. When I'm looking at sort of some of my brothers and their friends, and they're not only just like the the kind of media that they now digest. I think people call it like brain rot now, don't they?
Yeah.
And but also like the way it's affected the general sort of like attention span to the world, and to what's around them. People don't really feel as it's like a little bit of I'm here, I'm waiting on the bus, I'm on my phone, I'm walking, I'm on my phone. I think it's weird to say because I was also a child and I was also very glued to my phone as everybody was, but the older and maybe potentially wiser I do feel that it is problematic. I think definitely probably more now than than ever before. I guess especially with the case of sort of Grok, which we'll talk a little bit about on earlier as well, which we did last week, and AI being utilized within these social media platforms. It raises, I think, some serious concerns for minds that are still developing as well. But I know you're very keen on these sort of topics, Kate. So I'd be very interested to get your thoughts on this.
Obviously, as if you are here as well for a long time, you know that this is a very special topic for me. I think this is I'm quite happy finally this is actually actively being talked about. Like it was a massive thing last year, particularly with the Online Safety Act, etc. And I can see that the trend is to continue. So I'm happy that this is now on the main and hot topics of the day. I think this may be considered a good change. The fact that we are obviously under the Article 8, like information society services, we need consent to 13 years old, etc. And they want to push for the 16. I think this might be a good change because not only we have governments such as Australia, even some states in the US, Florida, etc., that actually are putting actively increasing the age 14, 15, 16, and obviously with their reason. And I think this kind of problem brings two other problems. On one side, we do know, as you were mentioning, that social media nowadays is a massive thing to just, it's not a good environment. It's not a healthy environment. It just is never had so bigger numbers in terms of depression, health, bullying, cyberbullying, to I don't know, to the young children, even self-esteem and anxiety. So I think this can be actually a good change in the sense of, all right, let's control this then. Let's try to avoid these situations to kind of increase and we'll control as much as we can. However, we have the other side, that is the side on our, data protection, I would say, that probably, I think the massive question is, do we really want are the children here involved to upload the ID documents to what is that supposed to mean in terms of age verification mechanisms? Because we do know that the self-declaration in terms of age was always a massive problem, wasn't it? Like children normally tend to lie, and because they won't access those social media platforms or anything else, so they tend to lie if it's just a self-declaration thing. So yes, are you 13 over 13 years old? Yes,
well, it's not a strong mechanism.
Yeah, it's definitely not. Not even like slightly.
It
no,
doesn't stop anything apart from maybe those with real like morality, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely not. And
but,
I just think like I'm just scared. So on one hand, I'm just thinking about what is that supposed to mean in the terms of mechanisms, how we will face the need for asking more information, for asking more documentation that proves their age. And I think that will lead us to the TikTok one that we'll talk a little bit more because of the news as well on that. But as well as I lost my rationale about the TikTok, but it was like the self-declaration mechanisms. And as well, I remember, don't you think that probably I'm just scared that this will mean that children go to the underground means because they will always find a way. You will always find a way, I think. Like they will always find a way to kind of roll around the law or just find other means to access certain paths.
I think sometimes the youth of today are a little bit underestimated. I think.
I agree.
I think if they want a way to do something, they'll definitely be able to find a way. And whilst I agree with changes like this and definitely being more cautious in the age we're in, it does raise questions. Being able to police the verification is probably going to prove quite difficult, I imagine. It depends on how they do it. I know, for example, that as Kate mentioned with TikTok, they're looking to roll out predictive age verification technology.
Yeah.
This is across the EU to remove accounts belonging to children who perceive that they're under the age of 13 years old. So people that have set up accounts when they shouldn't have them. So they're trying to really do it based on flags that moderators are going to be picking up on. So it's not going to be automatic, but they're going to be specialist moderators look to identify people like that. Apparently, it can still be appealed. So it's going to use things like facial age estimation, credit card authorization. You know, if I'm 13 years old, I don't have a credit card. I don't think I had a bank card till I was like 16.
Yeah.
And so, or government approved identification. Now, this is all well and good to an extent,
Exactly.
but processing the likely quite sensitive data, we're potentially looking at biometric data. So we've got passports, you know, and based on what are they looking for? You know, if I look at a TikTok about, I don't know, Spider-Man. I like Spider-Man, but I guess I could look at
And
a
you are
TikTok of
definitely not
Spider-Man.
13 years old,
I'm
are
not
you?
13 years old, but you know, they're going to now be moderators who are actively monitoring the potential activities of children online, and I don't really know how I feel about that. Because as a child, I mean, I guess the only government thing I have is like that proves my age is my passport.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is anything else. Maybe my bus pass. I don't know.
Probably.
It's really quite weird. I don't know how I feel about it, and I don't know how I feel about the predictive age. Either I don't know how I feel about the accuracy of that.
I think
or anything really.
I mean, I think you are raising very good points. I think like having a predictive systems in first instance with combined with human resources, I think is good. Is for moderation purposes. Is good stuff. We can review a little bit of what was our prediction about and kind of avoid any bad decisions that were made, and the fact that they have the right, well, and they have the ability to appeal afterwards. All right. But again, the predictive systems are collecting data.
For sure.
They are collecting behavior data, preference data, monitoring people preferences and interests, etc. So again, we are collecting more and more data. So I think that I do appreciate that we have a problem and we need to react to that. And obviously, this is all about age and all about how we will verify mechanisms, verify the age through any tools or mechanisms, and which is the best mechanism. I think there is no right answer. I think obviously the best would be not collecting as less as possible, but that sounds impossible because at the same is the risk of being incorrect.
But we've still got to make it abide by the principles, haven't we? Which you know, which I think might be hard. You know, especially if we're using images to predict age. There's questions about accuracy. You know, I think there's broader questions on are TikTok actually going to be the ones that are really going to be. I don't think TikTok has this technology at hand. You know, I don't think that's. I don't think that's particularly like. Problematic to say. I think it would likely be outsourced, and then there's obviously questions about the strength of the security and the actual compliance of the supplier. You know, they have a big, massive ransomware attack. Let's say they do the verification for TikTok, Meta.
I mean, TikTok Meta has been a problem for the past 5, 6,
it's proven
7 years.
You know, they're clearly not, you know, super geared up in towards compliance.
Yeah, and we are still reacting, and this is something that just we spoke like last session about the Grok and X, etc. And it's something that just makes me so uneasy because again, we are just reacting to something. This was predictable. We have a social media platforms where everyone, such as users, regardless the age, can access to it. We know for a fact that social media platforms, particularly, well, not Facebook, I think, at least from my side, it's more like my old members of my family that they still use Facebook, but Instagram pages, TikToks, even X, Twitter, etc., that are used majority between 12, even probably younger than that, up to 30, 35. I've seen TikToks today and I see 10 years old girls dancing and do the thing. So we know this is a reality. How can we leave this to a point that it needs something to happen to kind of be reactive? And again, we are leaving to the organizations to make those decisions, right? So it's the regulators that say, well, this is something wrong, this is something going on, we need to address these problems. and we will wait for further actions. And again, we'll leave them to do something. The potential will be fine. But again, the fines compared to actually their profits every year is nothing. So it's completely, I don't know, I feel as well, this is a very sensitive topic for me, because I do feel it was completely unpredictable. I think it's a completely risk management problem since day one, and we are just being reactive, whereas again, more problems will come through it. I think the Grok AI situation was definitely one of them. Like,
Yeah, highly problematic.
it was created like images and children, and obviously were complaints, and now we are having Ofcom, obviously.
Yeah, obviously
involved.
Ofcom have very obviously recently started their investigation, and they're kind of expediting that at the moment, funnily enough, because X and Elon Musk in particular has have made a few changes to the AI, now only limiting it to paid subscribers. Which is great.
A joke.
Yeah,
Sorry, my language, but it's absolutely a joke.
I don't know if you said it really too much. It's the thing of locking it behind a paywall, and you're still not locking it out completely. But they have to pay to access it. But that doesn't stop any kind of risk. Yes, it may potentially, the volume of it may change, but I imagine that non-paying subscribers would probably still be able to see the images that it's generating. I would guess so anyway. And Elon Musk very, very recently, actually, when he was talking to the UK, has accused the UK government of attempting to suppress free speech by suppressing Grok AI as a tool, which I think is a very interesting way to combat the way that the AI has been used. It's not being used for freedom of speech at all, is it?
This is kind of a familiar defense, isn't it? In these situations, when as soon as like the social platforms are kind of being, okay, you are doing this wrong, this is incorrect, you need to remove this content, is harmful, hate speech, images that, well, they are at the very, very least disgraceful. Oh, this is our right to speak, like freedom of speech. And I'm sorry.
We have the right to do it.
Fundamental right of freedom of speech.
It's a very typical cop out, I think. And I really truly do believe that Grok AI will eventually be positive in relation to the way that Ofcom and the government will act in relation to it. I think it will hopefully lead to some really positive change in that regard. And I think what this proves, all in all, is that both the EU and the UK, specifically the UK, needed to be a lot quicker and more dynamic in its creation of AI regulation. It is still not regulated enough.
Absolutely.
And if they reacted quicker, then instances maybe like this would be a little bit more remote.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I read it correctly, even the US senators, I think they made a point that there should be a balance between the public safety and obviously the freedom of speech, which I think that's spot on. I think it's exactly the balance, isn't it? Like the proportionality and the balance between one and the other, because they are not absolutely right. We need to address the situations based on both and understand actually based on the situation. And I think in here, absolutely freedom of speech is a right that I'm very happy to be able to live in a society that actually hears me and I can freely speak my mind. But there are obviously barriers, and that's where the public safety comes. And I think it's a very important balance that we need to do. But makes kind of the good point of there are so many reactions from the EU, from even the US, from the UK, and probably will kind of instigate most that we need a UK AI bill, kind of enlightening the EU AI Act or even the Digital Services Act, something kind of addressing those lines to be able to regulate AI. It's true that the UK GDPR still applies. It's true that we still have the principles, etc. But I think it's very important
it's not stopping it, though, is it?
Yeah, I think it's very important to have some sort of regulation that actually regulates this specific problem.
No, for sure, and I'm relatively pleased with how the US has responded to it so far. Obviously, with disdain, which I would have hoped so. It wasn't necessarily what I was expecting, but I'm glad that's the route that they've gone down. I really am. I know there's calls for senators at the moment that have been calling it to be taken off of app stores, whilst this is still obviously being something that's being investigated. I don't necessarily think that's a that's a terrible shout. Obviously, the obvious response is stay away from it if you don't like it, obviously. But I don't think, obviously, people still want to use social media for loads of different reasons, and even restricting it to paying subscribers does not then mean that we're mitigating any kind of risk. If anything, you're monopolizing the use of it further for people who are probably gaining some element of traction for the use of Grok, whatever kind of traction they're looking to get, whether it's for whatever, really. Actually, I don't even really know. But people are using it in any way, and they're clearly doing it for a purpose.
But I know that I think you are touching like a very good point, because I think these problems kind of just had the increasement like for the past few years. It's because they are free of charge. You can access whenever and whoever you want, free of charge. Now you have to pay subscribers, etc. But to access the platforms is fine. There are actually no further complex scenarios or complications to attach to them. So it's easy, isn't it? And that's the problem with every single type of platform is easy. Is with AI is the same thing. It's absolutely easy. We discussed a couple of sessions ago last year about, unfortunately, those young individuals that died because of ChatGPT. Sure. And I mean, that happened again because it's easy. There is no control whatsoever unless something bad happens and then the regulators come up, oh, you need to do something. I think this scenario in specific will be a very good test for the Online Safety Act. Yeah. I think will be a good test. I think this case in particular, because it's kind of a worldwide thing, they have a good opportunity now to create a good precedent. So I think they should use this wisely, and the ICO should have, aside from the absolute, very unfortunate statement from the ICO a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. I think their role in here should be bigger, should be more assertive. They should be a
huge statement made, really. Yes, and it would be nice to say.
That was very unfortunate.
I think a statement needs to be made. I think X is slowly sort of backtracking or trying to backtrack at the very least on some of its opinions, but it's nice to see the Online Safety Act sort of an Ofcom in particular being really quick to sort of act on this.
Yes.
And I have a feeling that we'll probably often be talking about this until the situation is resolved. Obviously, it's pretty hot to try in the news at the moment. So it truly is interesting, and I do urge people to keep their eyes on the case.
Absolutely.
I do really think it's an interesting one, but I think on that note, it kind of covers most of the points I think we wanted to talk about today.
I mean, I love that we always say, oh, 12:30, and it's just an half an hour, and then we just talk and just continue. I love that.
I think you might have noticed maybe from last week that I think we're making the decision to maybe stretch them out a little bit more.
Yes, definitely.
We heard a few cries from a few folks, which we really appreciate. By the way, we're so glad that you can jump on and enjoy these sessions. To put the sessions back to an hour. But we thought we'd meet you in the middle with 45 minutes. So
I mean, there is no kind of a restrict thing, isn't it? Like, no, just continue talking until someone asks us to shut up.
Until you all start leaving the chat, basically. So whenever you all get fed up, you can just start leaving your discretion, and then we'll know to shut up. But in terms of news this week, that covers everything that we'd like to for this session. We really thank you guys for joining us. Obviously, next week we'll be back to a topical session. And we're going to be looking at DPIAs that actually protect people. So DPIA is always a great session. Tends to be some of our more popular sessions. So we really hope that some of you can join us for that next week. And yeah, I think that's everything. All right. Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us today, and have a good weekend.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.